Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. Hi, I'm David Gouthro. This is Discover Fresh Perspectives. And today we're going to be discovering some fresh perspectives from Karen Ansen. And it's the afternoon for me. It's the morning for Karen. And that's not because we're not recording this at the same time. Karen is actually in Australia. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, David. I'm so pleased to be a member of your podcast, pals.
All right. So
I thought that was a cute name.
And I'm a cute kind of guy. People just kind of have to take that for granted because they can't see it. But and as long as no one contacts my wife, I should be able to maintain that illusion. So, Karen, you are a lawyer, and you said that something that you really like to do usually doesn't fall into the category of litigation or criminal investigations or things like that. You actually like to work with leaders and help them break patterns, which sounds fascinating.
Absolutely. It's been an interesting journey, David.
So why don't we start with how you got into doing that?
So I guess I'll take you back to I was probably about in my late 30s, and I was just very lost, I guess, in my work, and I had teenage children, and it was like late 30s. I think they were in their teenage years, and so anyway, I'd never really enjoyed my work. I'd always done government contracts and anyway. So what happened was I decided that I was going to go and do law in my 40s.
Oh.
It took me 9 years. And it was interesting because in that journey, I actually went to work for an organisation that was primarily industrial relations. So in our country, industrial relations is quite an interesting area of law, and we have a lot of union involvement with businesses and things like that. So, but it is unusual for women to go into that kind of area. So anyway, I was working in industrial relations, and actually the guy that was the head of that department must have seen something, and he said to me, "Look, I'm more than happy to help you and help you fund and get into what you want to do." So he gave me extra time off, and I had some help with paying for my courses. And I worked with, in Australia, the Fair Work Commission is the main legal body that manages all of our workplace law. Anyway, so I went and did law and finished 9 years. And the first job that I had, it took me about 3 or 4 months after I finished to get a job. No one would give me a job. And I went to an organisation that was aged care specialty. So interestingly, the lovely girl that gave me a job, Emma Patton, who's still a friend of mine, she trained me, and we worked together for quite a while. And yeah, she said to me, "You'll always have a job in aged care because it's a growing industry." So I thought, okay, here we go. And I always say, it's the only job you can get as a lawyer that they want to hug you and feed you.
Oh.
Because whenever you go into, the facilities, I've always got someone, wanting to help, but they're high touch, they're beautiful. So a lot of the industries I work in, not-for-profit, aged care, disability, and that kind of thing. So, and I've really enjoyed that because it's a real community in Australia. We come together once a year in a big national conference and kick our heels up. A lot of fun to be had at those conferences, a lot of steam to be let off. But anyway, so I mean, I guess the baptism for me was going into those industries and them being open, I guess, to seeing some of their shortcomings and the difficulties that they face. We've had a lot of inquiries, a lot of things into aged care over the years, and people really have to look at their leadership and look at the way the workplaces are and the difficulties that we have, with recruitment. And in Australia, we just can't get nursing staff, and we can't get, we're importing them from all over the world to come here to help because we don't have it. We don't have enough staff. But so a lot of the people that I work with long term, we become. I mean, there's a coaching element to what I do because a lot of people don't really understand how they get to where they are with an issue without some reflection. So, whilst I can assist with a legal problem and it might be an unfair dismissal or it might be a bullying claim or it might be an investigation, I always take a step back with the person and say, okay, how did we get here?
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm.
And so, uh, you talked about patterns
Mm,
and then you help people break them. So maybe you could talk first of all what you mean about a pattern. How would you describe or define a pattern? How do you see them? And then how do you
mm.
help people break through them?
Sure. Look, the only way I can describe it is and how I've learned about this stuff is really my own experiences. So, the patterns that I went through in my life of not being good enough, not feeling good enough, not being able to get out from under. I mean, really, I call it getting out of my own way. Okay, so what happened with me was that although I'd done law and I'd achieved a lot, I realised that there was something missing. There's an interesting woman that I saw at a legal conference, and it really hit home for me that um, her name's Lane Beachley. She was the world title holder for surfing in the world. Okay,
Wow.
she held that for 8 years in a row. Lane Beachley, interesting lady. If you ever want to speak to her, she'd love to talk to you. But I saw her and she got 8 world titles in a row, and she said for the first one, she didn't think she was ever gonna win it. So she just let it go. She just thought, "Oh, well," and she won it. She thought, "Oh, wow." But then she spent the next 6 in fear, worried she was gonna lose.
Wow.
And she realized that success for her came from a place that wasn't real. It was built on all of the insecurities that she had, all of the things that she knew about herself or didn't know about herself, these unconscious patterns that she'd been operating on for years. And I had this moment in that when I was at that conference, I thought, "Oh my God, I did 9 years of law in that exact place."
Hmm.
Thinking I was gonna fail, thinking there was no way I could possibly have ever done that. So through those learnings that I've had and those epiphanies, I guess, and the consciousness of my inability to be able to overcome my own confidence or whatever it might be, and I've had a lot of coaching. I've done a few. I do breath work and meditation every day, and um, some Himalayan practices. I've had some weird teachers.
Himalayan practices. I have to ask. You might have noticed my eyebrows raised at that. So, what is a Himalayan practice? Like, do you throw yourself at a mountain, or what's that?
Yeah, well, you can pretend to be, but it's more about, so some of the teachers that I've had, are quite interesting in that so, how did it start? So what happened was I got a coach and he does quantum healing. You
Say
would have heard of quantum healing, don't know what that is. Okay.
no, no.
Well, the
I mean,
quantum is the universe
right.
and your own your energy in the universe and all of the things that you're here to do and all of the programming that you've had from a child and to where you are now, and being able to overcome a lot of those issues and those things that you are programmed and have in your subconscious and in your field. Okay, you bring all this energy with you a lot of the time.
Okay.
So we operate on those patterns as you talked about before, and are totally unaware that
Mhm.
we're doing it. And so, what these teachings do, a lot of the Himalayan practices that I've learned is that um, they they start out talking about, well, the way it started for me was, I mean, at 40 something years old, I think I might have been 50. My coach started giving me all these chants to do.
Mm. Mhm.
So aham brahasmi is the first one, is who am I?
Okay.
Okay. So
Aham
aham brahasmi.
Brahmasmi. Okay.
Aham brahasmi. Yeah. So you can find them on YouTube. They're fascinating. And so 3 months I chanted that every morning
Hmm.
and to basically to see what would come in to my life.
Mhm.
And that's how actually I started this business. And I had the idea of all of the concepts. So my company is Ignite Concepts, and then I've got Ignite HR and Employment Law, and I've got Ignite Your Purpose. Believe it or not, no one owned that name.
Wow.
Can you believe that? I know. And so I that's how I started, and that was the first foray into. My husband thought I'd gone completely nuts, but he is absolutely fascinated
Hmm.
at what it's done for my life. It's revolutionized my confidence. It's
Wow.
helped me become exactly who I was always meant to be. And so from that leadership perspective and that deep understanding of self, I've been able to help leaders tap into that, understand that. I mean, I don't take them through programs of Aham Brahmasmi, but that leadership in the sense that I'm able to connect with people on such a deep level that they start to question their own patterns and their own beliefs, and that they're able to share those things with me to be able to assist them to help their relationships at work, but also how to pick and choose. Like, for example, a lot of legal problems come as a result of relationship breakdowns, miscommunications. A lot of people that come to me, for example, I do employee work as well as employer work. And the first thing I say to someone when they come to me, have you got the fortitude to go through this?
Hmm.
Because every single legal problem, everyone has a war story, right?
Oh yeah.
About how they got from here to here. And I always ask why. Where has this come from? I know there's been a wrongdoing, but why have you reacted this way? What is it in you that's driving this? And I quite often refer people to get assistance afterwards. I've helped people get hypnotherapy, all sorts of things to help them because their subconscious is driving a lot of things. And just that deep understanding, I guess, the one thing my clients will say to me in the worst legal problem ever, that I have a deep understanding of them as a human being and
Mhm.
being able
Wow.
to assist them. Yeah.
So how do you get to that point? And, there's probably some stereotypes running through my head, but, usually, when I think of lawyers and I think of my friends who are lawyers, it's hard to imagine people opening up to the extent that it sounds like people do with you.
Mm.
And now maybe is that because they come to you for that, or like when does this kind of intervention about patterns come in? Do
Mm.
they come looking for that, or they come looking for something else, and then you inject the pattern conversations and exploration in the midst of something?
So often I'll go in and I'll fix a massive problem. It might be a union issue, it could be bullying, investigation, it could be something that's happening in the workplace, and the leader will work with me on the issue, and we'll come to the end, we'll do some recommendations. And often what happens is I then start working with them um, on a monthly basis. So they become a client long term. So we then look at what kinds of issues that we can work on together. And the relationship generally with the CEO or the general manager, or it might be a care manager, it might be someone, in the industries that I work in, they will ring me. For example, they've got an issue with someone. It's a communication issue, or they're giving directives that aren't working, and so we start to talk about, okay, okay, do we need to do something about it, or do we need to work on you and how you're dealing with it? Is there something that can be done, or is it something that you can work on, or all of the things? So we talk over all of the options for people, and those relationships that I have with these people are able to transcend what the person is going through at the time, I guess, and are able to support them to pick the battles, to fight the things that they really need to deal with? Or is it about boundaries for them? Or is it about,
Okay.
how do I do things better? Is it my communication style? Am I being sarcastic? I listened to your podcast the other day about, emotional intelligence and that kind of thing. So it's those kinds of things. So I reflect back to them when you get to know them and they understand their own patterns. Is this a pattern again for you? Is this coming up for you? Or do we need to actually do something about it? It could be, I mean, obviously, if it's an investigation into elder abuse or something like that, it's very different. But it's usually about the leader checking in. They do it regularly about how to deal with everyday problems and how to transcend those problems in a way that supports the team to be better, to be happier, to be more productive, to be, yeah.
So what do you have on a business card, if there is such a thing? Like, is it lawyer? Is it therapist? Is it whatever? I mean, one of the things you do is the work you do is therapeutic. That doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
mean that you have a shingle that says therapist, but what is it? Yeah.
Mm.
How do you see yourself?
Well, it's interesting because it's this version of my business has really only come into the foray in the last 6 months, I guess.
Mm,
I've done bits and pieces of it, but the last 6 months for me, has been really revolutionary in that I've really let this version of who I am and who I've become be part of that process. I mean, some people buy me just for the lawyer stuff,
mhm,
and my husband says it's like you flick a switch. He says that you're in that
mm.
mode of understanding and being and coaching, and then all of a sudden you'll just go lawyer. And it's just, he says it's fascinating to watch. He loves it because there's a little bit of both always in everything that I
Yeah.
do. Like, explaining, okay, well, this is what I would advise legally. However, this is what I think is actually going on for you. And let's deal with that. Let's have a talk about that and see if we can find a legal solution as well. But yeah, so my bio has and my website now has that interaction. So people
Mm,
get that when they read about me, they understand that you're going to get something quite different than a textbook lawyer. And they buy that. They understand what that means for them, and they yeah. So my website has been revolutionized with a lot more of that language. And what I did was I've combined the businesses now to be one.
mm.
So Ignite Your Purpose and the Ignite HR and Employment Law together, so that yeah, I'm moving into more of that space. If I'll give you an example, quite interesting. It was quite a difficult, potentially legal issue where two business they were partners in a business, and one of them had some really suspected that one of them had some really big issues in terms of substance abuse, and they weren't really showing up. There'd been a lot of leave. There'd been, and this particular director had rung me and said, "Look, I actually don't know how to deal with this because he's been my friend for 25 years and I don't know what to do. Do you think you could come and have a chat?" And I said, "Look, I gave him all of the issues. I gave him all of the information around the legal side of it. And I said to him,
Mm,
this is what we could do in terms of holding him to account, in terms of the leave and the behaviour and the all the other things." I said,
mm,
"However, I suspect if we go all full legal uh, advice and legal process on him, I suspect you'll lose the relationship. There will be
mm,
at the moment, the way he is acting, his confidence is very low. And people who have low confidence quite often come out in a way that is not their authentic self. Go into that fight and flight
Okay.
and then start behaving in a litigative way. So I said, let's try having a conversation and see if he will open the door to having a conversation about what's actually going on so that we can either try and repair the relationship and find him a way to get him some support if he's open to that. Because I suspect if we go the other way, we're going to have
Right.
a big fight with him. Yeah. Mm. Interesting, hey?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and especially to have like I really like the combination of sort of having the legal sense and but also the personal, whatever the non-legal sense is, because I
Yeah.
think you can get into trouble if you're exclusively holding one perspective. Right. And that's the only one, but being able to sort of pick and choose and really be attending to what the person is, what the needs are, and then to respond appropriately. We talked earlier at the beginning of this about about patterns. Well, are there any sort of major patterns that you see amongst leaders today that, just in case
Mm.
people are listening, might think, "Oh, I think that's my pattern."
Yeah. Well, everyone talks about fake it till you make it and all the issues around, I'm just trying to think of the term they call it, when you oh god, I've forgotten what it's
Like the
called.
imposter syndrome sort of
Yeah,
thing, or
imposter syndrome. Like, you see that a lot, but the problem is that, you know, you get you get people that are promoted because they're so good at what they do, and they get into a role, and then what happens a lot of the time is that they do what they know how to do, but don't actually step up into what I call the helicopter mode. If you're in a leadership role, you're still in the doing, you're still doing all of the things because that's what you're comfortable in. And how people elevate themselves or not. I mean, I love leadership structures that the leaders are at the bottom
Mhm.
of the structure.
So the
They should
servant
be.
leadership sort of thing.
That's it. That's the
Yeah.
way that a lot of the disability organisations I work with work like that
Mm.
because it's the support workers that should be at the top. They should be the ones that are feeding all of the information to the leaders so that they're supported to go there, right? But, the thing that I see a lot is people playing small. And I have those conversations with people when we're working with operations managers and people like that who are very, very hands-on. They're dealing with people every day. And the patterns that I see where they are they try to be too liked or they go the opposite way, right? So they spend a lot of time sort of talking to people and being very nice and that stabilizer influence. But the problem is that you can't be in that space. There's an element of it to engage people, but there always needs to be a point where you say, for example, if someone's coming to you all the time, when leaders come to me with the same problem, how do I reflect back at them? What is it that you need to do differently? What new thinking do we need today? Because I've heard this from you the last 6 or 7 times.
Mhm.
Okay. And here we are again. We're still here. And we haven't actually moved on. And you see that in patterns in people that you know as well, don't you? You see it a lot in terms of they complain about the same things over and over again. And, you know, I said earlier in this, like the patterns that people get. Things will keep showing up for you until you do something differently,
Mhm.
until you either recognize it or learn from it or do something differently. So my favorite saying is, what new thinking do we need today?
Lovely.
Yeah. And that works with everybody. And the other thing that I think's interesting that I learned the other day not from your podcast, but it was another one,
What?
is
Do
to
you
get
listen to other
enga
podcasts?
to get engagement out of people is such a strange but such an easy thing to do. Is ask them to do you a favor. Did you know that?
I you know, I didn't know that, but when you say that, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's to me where I see it is, if in our association, if you ask for volunteers, no one steps up, nobody.
No,
But if you
no.
ask someone, and you reach out and make that
typically.
connection. Then
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
interesting.
And that for some reason psychologically helps people. So, leaders who are very formal in the way that they deal with things, and they're very rule driven, and they're very, they can't step out of the box. Um, they quite often lose people along the way because they're not human enough. There's not enough of that. And being vulnerable and open to hearing feedback. That's the other thing that I find is really interesting, is that when you go into a meeting, I go into meetings for investigations for all sorts of things. I did one the other day for an elder abuse matter or something, I think. And, I never go into them with the idea that I know what the outcome is going to
Mhm,
be,
mhm,
because otherwise what that does is taint the way that, so I talk to people about that. Irrespective of the relationship you have with your staff or as a leader, the one thing that you need to do is put aside all of your prejudices, all your biases, all of the previous history, all the things you've heard, and have one-on-one conversations with people that are meaningful and show vulnerability and a deep understanding. Don't ever be frightened of what people are going to
mhm,
say to you, because people are. Unfortunately, these days, people are really avoiding conflict, and it's absolutely ruining relationships because, again, that fight and flight thing. And a lot of the time, and I realize this about myself, was whenever things get tough, I want to go to bed. I want to go to sleep,
yeah,
which is an avoidance technique, right? You're avoiding things. I didn't realize that. Gabby Bernstein, who's a very famous coach from America, I saw her the other day. I went to Sydney and saw her. And when I read her book, Self-Help, that's a bloody great book, I tell you.
mm,
Oh my God. It's a psychological, like, it's come from from deep psychological roots, this idea of understanding self and the parts of you that
mm,
uh, become part of you as a child, and then you operate from those patterns. They're helping you, right? You operate from those patterns, they're helping you, but the problem is they're also causing problems. So that she calls them firefighters and managers and firefighters. Anyway, it's a whole host of psychological stuff that's gone in the background of that book. But anyway, that's for another day. Um, but the funniest part of all that is that, you realize then that, I can't even know what I was saying. Can't remember what I was saying about that. But anyway, that's one of the things I have learned recently about about patterns about myself. Mhm.
So let me ask you this question then, for people that are listening. Let's say that they're not sure if they're subject to, a pattern or oh, it's just like bias. Like I don't have any biases, but I can sure see yours very clearly. Like we're not really good at
Mhm.
recognizing our own biases. And, I my guess would be that we're not really good at recognizing our own patterns. So are there some ways for someone to start to recognize their own patterns without it requiring a crisis to force you to? Because I think a lot of times people start to have these conversations because they're run up against a brick wall, or there's some sort of shock to the says, "Oh, current state no longer sustainable." But are there some proactive ways that you don't have to wait for pain or fear or agony to be willing to start to look for your patterns? Is there any way to
Well,
do that?
the thing for me is that, I realize that, um, it's not as easy as you think. Once you start to consciously think about some of your reactions to things, and as you said, normally it takes a crisis, so there's gotta be something big for you to go, "Well, hang on a minute, I need to fix
Mm,
that." But if it's just annoying you and you think, okay, this interaction, for example, is not going well with somebody, and I'm just not sure why. Have a think about what's triggering you and all of the things that reaction that you're getting from it, and think to yourself and start to think about how you can explain, or if you're brave enough to talk about it to somebody or to them, to say, look, I'm finding that this is doing something for me. Is that happening for you? Because it doesn't feel like we're getting on at the moment. And just be conscious about it, because otherwise what you do is you're then using all of the things to either block the person, to say, okay, I'm going to avoid them, or I'm just going to only deal with work. What people do, they shut down and they all of a sudden, I'm only going to deal with this person online. I'm only going to email them. I'm not dealing with them in person anymore. That's not effective. That is not resolving the shortcomings in relationships that need to be addressed, because you can't be a leader. I mean, it's ridiculous, the idea that you can only email someone. That happens all the time. I get people saying, "Oh, you don't deal with them in person anymore because it's being misinterpreted." For goodness sake.
There's
But yeah, just that conscious thought that, okay, how did we get here? Consciously, what am I doing? What is this person doing? And how do I resolve this? Everybody every day that has a problem, they get out of bed, for example, and they don't get along with X at work, and they walk past and they get that ball in their stomach and they think, oh God, I don't want to even look at them. Please leave me alone. So, oh great, they're off on sick leave. I don't need to deal with them anymore. You know, at the moment. And it it requires bravery, and all of us who've been through any of those sort of situations, we all think of every single way we can possibly fix it. But I think you need to come back to self and have a think about what it is that's actually going on for you when this is happening, because it's all deflection. It's all about the other person. It's not about the other person. You can only control the way you react to things.
when you a couple of moments ago you said something that made me think about one of the choices that we have, and I still think it requires some kind of triggering event to stop us to look in the mirror. But when we start to feel that anxiety, that little crick on the neck, the stomach, the not sleepy, and things like that, I can choose to take a how can I fix this, or how can I grow through this, and those are two quite different
Different.
paths, right? Because fix is just get it out of there, get rid of it. There's rarely growth involved, but to grow sometimes means moving into discomfort. And lately, I've been working with some of my clients on how to have courageous conversations, and that the conversations that don't happen are usually way, way more toxic and destructive than the tough ones that do.
Oh, I love that, because I noticed that one of the things you do on your website too is that you do help groups being authentic in meetings and being able to share things and deepen relationships. Because I've got a theory, and I don't know, I know in my life, for me, it's true that every relationship that you heal gets deeper and there's a deeper understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, the communication from the perspective of the fear around it is often worse. The fear around the actual conversation is worse than the actual conversation, because you're overthinking it. And all I say to people is drop in to who you really are as a person. Your brain's protecting you. It's telling you all the things, all the terrible, worst things that could possibly happen. If you drop into who you are, and know yourself very well, I think you have a better chance.
It's those times, those conversations, the longer we postpone them, the conversation itself, the content is never changed, but the anxiety is built up because I imagine the conversation, not just my part dropping into myself. I'm
Yeah.
going to do your part as well, right? I'll say this, then she's going to say that. Well, then, because based on past and line, you just spiral right up, and then you're never going to have the conversation. You'll move out of town. You'll move to another country. I'll move to Australia, for crying out loud. Who knows? But
Look, there's one thing that I will say to you is that the other tip that I've got that I tell my leaders all the time is that, ask questions,
mm-hmm.
don't make statements.
Well, and that's why whenever again, working with clients, when you feel a judgment coming up, flip it to being a curiosity-based question,
Absolutely.
right? It
Yeah.
makes things so much easier. Karen, this has been delightful. I hope how did you come to find out about this anyhow? You're the furthest away person I've chatted with.
Yeah, no, well, I've got there's a coach, she's a media coach, and she actually gave me there's an app that you can use to pull podcasts out all over the world that align with who you are.
Wow.
and yours came up as one of the first. So that I listened to you, and then I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna reach out."
So we can be friends. We are friends already.
Absolutely. When you come to Australia, I'll take you, show you around.
I would absolutely love to do that. So thank you very much for your time today, Karen. I
Oh,
guess you're
welcome. It's been
at the beginning
absolutely beautiful.
of your workday. And yeah, this has been David Gouthro with Discover Fresh Perspectives today with Karen Ansen. And, come on back next week and we'll find some different perspectives with someone totally different again. Thank you very much for listening. Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.